Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking you straight into the heart of a sweeping geopolitical and military paradigm shift that is unfolding right now in real time.
Yeah, it's moving incredibly fast.
It really is. But before we get into the really heavy analysis, please take a quick second to subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these critical breakdowns.
Absolutely.
So, what is our mission for today? We are looking at a fundamental pivot in how the United States and Israel are handling strikes on Iran. Based on the data I have right here in front of me, we're witnessing a complete departure from the immediate high-tempo, rapid-fire retaliatory attacks we might usually expect.
Right. The whole doctrine is shifting.
Exactly. Instead, both militaries are preparing for a prolonged, much lower tempo strategy. They're downshifting the pace. They're planning to sustain limited, targeted military operations over a significantly extended timeline. And the core reason for this shift isn't just a sudden change in military philosophy. It is deeply rooted in brutal economics and the absolute limits of logistical endurance.
That is precisely the crux of the issue. We are watching a fundamental recalculation of what is actually sustainable in modern warfare. I mean, you simply cannot maintain a sprint indefinitely when the reality of the battlefield dictates an ultramarathon.
Yeah.
The underlying numbers and the physical supply chains we are looking at are dictating the strategy rather than the political or military desires dictating the pace. Modern conflict has always had an economic component, but we're entering an era where the spreadsheet is just as decisive as the munitions.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the financial data driving this recalculation is just unprecedented. A prominent political journal just published preliminary estimates from the Pentagon, which were recently shared by a U.S. Congress representative.
And the numbers are staggering.
They really are. This current localized conflict is costing the United States approximately $1 billion per day.
A day.
Let that sink in for a second. $1 billion every 24 hours. Now, I have definitely had some expensive weekends in my life, but burning through $1 billion a day is a completely different stratosphere of spending.
Just a bit outside the usual budget.
Right. And when you look closely at what constitutes that cost, it's not just the price of the missiles. We are talking about the immense logistical tail. You've got to keep aircraft carriers on station, aviation fuel for 24/7 surveillance flights, hazard pay for personnel.
Constant satellite repositioning, which is not cheap.
Exactly. Just yesterday, the U.S. Defense Department requested an additional $50 billion in emergency funding.
Yeah.
If you do the simple arithmetic, $50 billion only covers about 50 days of these limited combat operations. That is an extraordinary sum of money for less than 2 months of sustainability.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that $50 billion is essentially just buying the coalition a very brief window of time. The reason the money is incinerating at that rate comes down to a critical systemic vulnerability on the ground.
The interceptors.
Exactly. The entire region is facing a severe, acute shortage of interceptors. The defensive stockpiles are simply running dry. As we enter the 7th day of this specific operational phase, air defense stockpiles across the Middle East are nearing total exhaustion.
Wow. Total exhaustion.
The analogy I keep coming back to is that military planners are essentially trying to bail water out of a sinking ship using a very small, incredibly expensive bucket. Eventually, the sheer volume of incoming water, or in this case, the volume of incoming aerial threats, completely overwhelms your physical capacity to clear it.
And it's not just about having the cash to buy more buckets, is it? It's about the ability to actually manufacture.
Exactly. This is the manufacturing bottleneck that often gets overlooked in these discussions. Think about what we're actually matching up here. On one side, you have automated, explosive-laden drones. A state or even a well-funded proxy group can build a functional attack drone in a makeshift garage in about a week.
Using commercial parts?
Right, for roughly $20,000. On the other side, you have the interceptor. Let's use the Patriot missile system as the prime example. A Patriot interceptor isn't just a heavy bullet. It is a multi-million-dollar flying computer designed to knock supersonic fighter jets out of the sky.
Yeah.
It requires highly specialized microchips, rare earth metals, and a complex aerospace supply chain spanning multiple countries. It takes months to forge a single missile. You cannot simply print more of them overnight just because Congress wrote a check. So, you are firing a $4 million flying supercomputer at a drone powered by what is essentially a modified lawnmower engine.
The economic math collapses entirely.
It completely falls apart.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The coalition isn't just sitting back and watching the ship sink. Looking at the supply chain data and troop movements we've pulled for today, they are urgently trying to pivot away from this heavy reliance on limited, exquisite systems like the Patriot.
Which is easier said than done.
True, but they are looking for agile, cost-effective solutions. International media reports show that Britain has just deployed specialized counter-drone teams to the Middle East. And these aren't just theoretical strategists. These personnel are bringing direct, hands-on operational experience from the conflict in Eastern Europe.
The Ukraine playbook.
Exactly. They have been studying counter-drone tactics, electronic warfare, and acoustic sensor networks right alongside Ukrainian forces, who have essentially written the modern playbook on drone defense. The first British team is already on the ground, and a second unit is arriving imminently.
Right.
The strategy is to help the U.S. stand up highly mobile, adaptable anti-drone units that use jamming, localized kinetics, and cheap countermeasures. To me, this seems like an incredibly smart, highly necessary tactical pivot. They are adapting to the realities of the modern battlefield to restore the defensive umbrella without completely bankrupting their arsenals.
See, what's fascinating here is how theoretical optimism clashes with ground-level reality. The tactical pivot you are describing sounds incredibly smart in a vacuum. Applying the lessons learned from Eastern Europe is absolutely the right long-term move. But the timeline is the fatal flaw. The coalition leadership might believe this agile transition will save their arsenals, but the regional Arab states in the Persian Gulf fiercely disagree with the feasibility of this timeline.
Because they are the ones under fire right now.
Exactly. As you know, the Gulf Cooperative Council states rely heavily on the U.S. security umbrella. We are talking about the major players here. They are running dangerously low on the exact heavy interceptors they need right this very second to shield their critical infrastructure.
Yeah, you can't really wait around when your oil refineries are exposed.
Precisely. For them, waiting weeks or months for agile counter-drone teams to set up, calibrate their sensors, and fully integrate into the regional defensive network is simply not an option. Their economies are at risk today. They don't particularly care about the long-term manufacturing bottlenecks or where the United States sources its weaponry. They just want the protective umbrella restored immediately.
Which makes total sense from their perspective. If your entire economy is built on exporting energy, you can't afford a transitional period where your infrastructure is basically a sitting duck. And that anxiety is translating into some serious geopolitical friction.
It has escalated well beyond friction into outright financial coercion.
Really?
Yes. The intelligence reports indicate that Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar are actively coordinating a profound economic ultimatum. They are threatening to withdraw from highly lucrative U.S. defense contracts and cancel substantial future investment commitments in the United States unless they receive an immediate resupply of interest. These are nations that invest hundreds of billions of dollars into the U.S. economy and its defense sector. They are essentially leveraging that immense economic weight to demand a technological fix to the strain this conflict is putting on their domestic security.
That is a staggering geopolitical headache. They are basically saying, if your hardware can't protect our infrastructure today, we will take our billions of dollars to a different global partner tomorrow.
That's the ultimatum.
And that economic ultimatum didn't just come out of nowhere. It is born out of sheer panic when these leaders look at their daily defense logs. Hey, real quick, if you are finding this breakdown helpful and you're getting some aha moments from our deep dive today, please take a second to like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts below, and absolutely do not forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and keep doing this for you.
Yes, please do.
Okay, let's get back into it. Let's look at what is actually happening in the skies over the Gulf that is triggering this level of panic. The mathematical failure we are seeing is just brutal.
It is entirely unsustainable. Let's examine the operational inefficiency currently plaguing air defense systems in Qatar and the UAE. Military analysts tracking the telemetry data are observing a deeply troubling pattern.
Okay.
When opposing forces launch a volley of, say, 5 projectiles, the defending nations are frequently firing up to 15 Patriot missiles in response.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. They are firing 15 Patriot missiles to intercept just 5 incoming targets.
Exactly. That is a 3-to-1 ratio.
That's insane.
It is, but think about it. When you are defending critical infrastructure like a desalination plant or a major oil terminal, you cannot rely on a single interceptor with an 80 or 90% kill probability. A 10% chance of a drone slipping through and hitting a refinery is unacceptable.
Right, because a single hit is catastrophic.
So, military doctrine dictates firing multiple interceptors at a single target to guarantee its destruction. But mathematically, applying that doctrine against swarms of cheap drones is ruinous. You are firing 3 incredibly expensive interceptors to eliminate 1 low-cost threat.
Yeah.
It is like trying to fix a leaky roof by patching it with solid gold plates. That 3-to-1 ratio accelerates the depletion of their already fragile stockpiles at an alarming rate. It is an economic failure that practically guarantees you will run out of ammunition long before the enemy runs out of cheap projectiles.
And we're already seeing the devastating results of those stockpiles running completely dry. Let's walk through the visual and satellite evidence from the past 24 hours, because it paints a very grim picture of what happens when the gold plates run out. Let's start with Bahrain.
A very clear example.
Based on recent satellite imagery and local footage, Bahrain appears to be entirely out of interceptor. During the last wave of attacks, there was a complete absence of active air defense. At least 3 direct impacts bypassed their systems entirely.
Just flew right through.
And remember, Bahrain is geographically compact. Nearly every square kilometer has strategic, military, or economic value. This catastrophic defensive failure allowed the largest oil refinery in the Middle East region to be severely damaged, triggering massive uncontrolled fires. On top of that, multiple explosions were reported overnight at U.S. naval and military installations located directly within Bahrain.
Which perfectly illustrates the devastating immediate consequences of a depleted defensive umbrella. The moment you lose the interceptors, you lose the infrastructure. And Kuwait is facing a remarkably similar crisis.
Yeah, the data out of Kuwait is alarming.
Over the last 24 hours, the Ali Al Salim Air Base in Kuwait was heavily targeted. We have thermal anomaly data and satellite imagery strongly indicating that up to 20% of this critical military installation is currently engulfed in flames.
20%. That's massive.
That level of destruction strongly suggests that Kuwaiti defensive stockpiles have also run completely dry. So you currently have at least 2 out of these vital Gulf states sitting almost completely exposed to further strikes.
So what does this all mean? If you have 2 vital nations completely exposed, an oil refinery burning, U.S. military bases taking direct hits, and those agile UK counter-drone teams arriving far too late to stop the immediate bleeding, where does this go next?
It points to a major escalation.
But wait, let me ask you this first. If the coalition has overwhelming air superiority in the region, which they do, why are we hearing whispers about a ground invasion? Why can't they just fly bombing sorties and use their fighter jets to take out the launch sites in Iraq and eliminate the problem from the air?
That is the logical question, but it bumps up against the reality of asymmetrical warfare. You cannot simply bomb these launch sites from the air because of the way these drones are deployed. These aren't massive, stationary missile silos that you can easily spot on a satellite feed.
Right.
These drones are being fired from the back of modified commercial pickup trucks that can be hidden inside civilian garages, under highway overpasses, or in dense urban neighborhoods.
So they're basically shoot and scoot.
Exactly. The operators drive out, launch the drone, and drive back into hiding in a matter of minutes. By the time an AWACS plane spots the launch and a fighter jet reaches the coordinates, the truck is long gone. Air power is highly ineffective against decentralized, highly mobile targets.
I see.
The only definitive way to halt these launches is to secure the territory itself. You need boots on the ground, clearing neighborhoods, and physically neutralizing the logistics networks. And that means a ground operation into the western regions of the opposing territory, specifically moving forces into northeastern Iraq.
Which is exactly the kind of prolonged entanglement the coalition desperately wants to avoid. Yet the data shows they are already making preparations for it. Intelligence sources report that the U.S. is conducting extensive redeployments right now. They are moving armored vehicles, tanks, and vital logistical equipment into northeastern Iraq.
Setting the stage.
Yes, they are actively reinforcing the formations required for what seems to be a potentially inevitable ground offensive. But the opposing forces aren't just sitting passively, waiting for this massive troop buildup to finish. They are actively targeting the coalition's staging bases around Erbil with continuous drone strikes. They are explicitly trying to disrupt the logistics of this buildup before a ground operation can even be launched.
This raises an important question. What happens when the tactical threat evolves faster than the coalition can successfully deploy that ground force?
That's the nightmare scenario.
Because the opposing forces are adapting, and they are no longer just relying on garage-built drones. Fresh intelligence and footage from local sources reveal the deployment of a terrifying new variable on the battlefield, a highly advanced ballistic missile identified as the Khorramshahr 4.
And from what I understand, this is not just a standard point-and-shoot munition. It brings a completely different level of complexity to the defense network.
Far from it. The Khorramshahr 4 is equipped with a highly complex cluster payload. It contains dozens of individual submunitions housed within a single maneuverable warhead.
Oh, wow.
So instead of a Patriot battery tracking and intercepting one large, predictable missile, the warhead breaks apart high in the atmosphere. Suddenly, the defense systems have to track, target, and intercept dozens of smaller, erratic targets simultaneously as they rain down.
Which means your 3-to-1 ratio problem just got exponentially worse.
Precisely. To defeat a weapon of this nature, you do not just need a few more interceptors, you need an exponential increase in your firing capacity, which, as we have discussed at length today, is the exact resource the coalition completely lacks right now.
Yeah.
The opposing forces are clearly reading the board. They are bracing for a potential ground invasion, but simultaneously, they are maximizing the kinetic pressure on an already fracturing regional defense network. They are forcing the coalition to spend money in interceptors they simply do not have.
It is an incredibly sobering situation. We started this deep dive talking about a strategic shift toward a long-term, low-tempo operational pace, but when you really drill down into it, it all boils down to the brutal economics and supply chain math of modern conflict.
It really does. It's a spreadsheet war.
You have major global states threatening to pull billions of dollars in defense contracts, critical oil refineries burning because of a lack of ammunition, a substantial ground buildup forming in Iraq to chase pickup trucks, and a highly advanced new missile that exploits the exact logistical weakness the coalition is struggling to fix.
The pressure is immense.
We are going to keep tracking this, Davey, closely as it develops, so please make sure you hit that subscribe button before you go so you don't miss our next update. But I want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
When your multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art defense systems are being completely depleted by cheap garage-built drones, and the only way to fix that problem is to initiate a grueling ground war that absolutely no one wants, at what point does having the most advanced military technology in the world stop being a strategic advantage and start becoming a crippling financial trap? Think about that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.